Right guys, welcome to the second episode of Below the Bar.
In this episode, expect to find out why men are struggling in the modern world, how the government could reintroduce national service,
And what we think of Andrew Tate.
Let's get into it.
And we're back.
Welcome back. Okay, this week we're covering a completely different topic to last week. So we're going to try and keep it fresh and not cover off the same kind of things as every week. So this week we're going through the masculinity crisis, which is pretty pertinent at the moment.
Pertinent, and it's also quite an amorphous subject.
Yes.
So we may have our work cut out trying to keep a lid on things.
That's okay.
That is fine. So I think we should start off with a definition.
Yeah,
Or
go for it.
or lack of definition.
Yeah, so we obviously doing research for this podcast. Neither of us have managed to find a concrete definition.
Or one that we agree with.
Yeah, well, concrete definition.
And I don't think there is one. But that's
No.
good because we can riff off it.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is one I just found off Google.
Hot off the press.
The masculinity crisis refers to men losing a self. Fucking hell. Try that again. The masculinity crisis refers to men losing a sense of self in relation to conventional gender roles.
Yeah, so it's like basically men being lost in society.
Yeah,
right?
effectively.
The traditional masculine role in society of being a father figure, a provider, and going and doing the work and then coming back and providing for the family and taking care of the family is almost getting lost in this in the modern world, isn't it?
Yeah. So
I think that's what it refers
conventional gender roles out the window.
Yeah.
It's all a bit of a free for all now.
Yeah. You can do what you like.
And a lot of men feel lost or without purpose.
As a result of that, I think.
But fear not, because we're here. So, rest assured, the masculinity crisis is over.
Ultra qualified to talk about this topic, obviously. 2 males, no female perspective.
Yeah, we should caveat this by saying that no females were invited to share their opinion on this podcast. So make of that what you will.
That's not a reflection on anything else other than the fact that
we don't know any females.
It wouldn't fit the brand. It's probably brothers, right?
Yeah, true.
Mind you, they can identify now, so you never know.
Right, okay. So before we get bogged down into the masculinity crisis and the many rabbit holes that will offer, let's get helmet of the week out of the way.
So our new tradition at the top end of the podcast is going to be helmet of the week. So I'll let you go first.
Right, okay. So I think we've both gone off piste a bit this week, as in they're not actually individual. There is no singular helmet.
Yes.
So mine is more of a concept.
Okay.
And I think yours is a brand.
Yeah, mine's a brand.
My issue this week is people that make running content purely so they can brag effectively.
Yeah, so like...
They do it under the guise of helping people.
Making it elitist.
But it's literally just so they can flex how many miles they've done this week.
Yeah.
These kind of people normally frequent TikTok, Instagram reels, kind of like low-key saying that they've run 3 marathons in a week.
Yeah, that nonchalance of, accidentally just like PB'd my 10k while I was doing a set of intervals for a marathon prep. It's like that nonchalance of just, you didn't accidentally PB. You knew you were going to do it, right?
Exactly.
For it.
So we've touched on this. I think this feeds into my issue with gatekeeping in the fitness industry as well. And this idea that certain people hold all the keys to the doors. I don't like that. That's bollocks. And it's particularly pertinent within running.
Yeah, it is. It's a strange industry, isn't it?
It's quite cliquey.
Yeah,
the running community.
And I feel like it can be not very inclusive.
Exactly.
Like if you're not doing a certain amount of miles a week, or you're not doing a certain pace, you feel like, or it's deemed that you don't even enter into the conversation. You're not even invited into the chat.
Yeah.
Right. You have to be doing 100k a week to even qualify, which is bollocks, obviously, as we know.
Yeah. So we're new to this kind of longer distance running.
Yeah,
market.
exactly.
So,
and this is what we're talking about. We're talking about endurance running, by the way.
Yeah. So you're talking about people that are quite clearly very experienced at long distance running. They're built for it. They're like a fucking beanpole.
Yeah.
And they're kind of... It's a hard one to kind of articulate, but it's seeing is believing.
Yeah. I'm going to add to this. This isn't nothing to do with my helmet of the week. I'm going to add to this with the appropriation of the hybrid term. So this plays in. So a hybrid athlete, in my view, is someone who can lift a lot of weight, run fast or far. Pretty much it, innit? Like
that's a good definition.
Exposing themselves to endurance or aerobic stuff and strength stuff. That should be it. I've seen so many people call themselves hybrid athletes just because they do one gym session a week, but they majority run.
Yeah, they do 4 sets of back squat at like 60 kilos.
Yeah, well, not even that. I wish it was that. It's like they do their strength and conditioning for their running, and now all of a sudden they're a hybrid athlete. So they're doing like walking lunges with their body weight, and they're a hybrid athlete.
So it's almost like they're doing like their plyometrics and their running mobility in a gym. So that makes them a hybrid athlete.
Exactly.
You could just do it on the fucking pavement, your helmet.
Yeah, trust. That's it. So I'll add to Eddie's helmet of the week with that because I think it plays in nicely.
Yeah, and stay tuned as well for more of this content because I feel it is on the rise.
Yeah, I feel like and my knowledge of it is just coming up because obviously we're exposing ourselves to this echo chamber at the moment. So now we're in that algorithm, aren't we? So
yeah, and we're coming into marathon season, so
it's going to be
buckle down because these hats are going to come thick and fast.
Exactly, or helmets.
Right, well that's mine.
Okay, so I get straight into mine. Is again not an individual; it's a company. So Dove, you know the hand soap.
I love. Wait, can we just deconstruct this for a moment?
Well,
we basically started a podcast to just slag people off that we don't like.
I know because it's topical
and it's constructive. I'm telling them how they can be better. Right,
exactly.
Anyway, back to the point.
Dove. So they've called for better representation in Hollywood for the fat suit category.
What's that?
So there's a category in Hollywood that celebrates the people who wear fat suits, right, in films, and they think that ostracises the fact that they're not having actual fat people play those roles. So the better representation just means they need to be more accurate with their casting. So they need to cast fat people. So essentially, in their attempt to be woke, what they've said is they're forcing actors and actresses who want to play those roles to now not just wear a fat suit and be a healthy weight or whatever, healthy rig. Now they've got to actually be £400 or £500 to make it accurate.
Right, firstly, I hadn't heard of this.
Yeah, okay.
So what you're about to hear is my honest, raw response.
This is what we want.
What I'm going to say secondly is, that's bollocks.
Yeah, as you may have heard a lot of Eddie's responses. So
let's take Fat Bastard from Austin Powers, for instance. That's Mike Myers wearing a fat suit.
Yeah, played fantastically well.
Would that be better or worse if it was played by an actual fat person?
Doesn't matter. It's just irrelevant, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. He's not real.
Yeah, exactly.
His name is Fat Bastard.
Well, also, that's the whole point of being an actor. So you can play your hand at different roles and different... have a bit of a range. So you can play whatever it is you need to play, and then you can actually go and put a fat suit on. You can embody something else.
Yeah, but, I mean, there are levels to this. So, like, obviously, blackface is wrong.
Yeah,
we're not suggesting that people do blackface.
Yeah.
But was Heath Ledger not qualified to play the Joker because he didn't go to clown school?
Yeah, but this is the thing. So this isn't the issue. I think it's not. It's completely separate to anything like a blackface or anything like makeup driven, because this is actually forcing people to be unhealthy. If it was to be pushed through, if they had their way, actors and actors would wanting to go and do those roles would either have to, go into the industry and stay fat, like we were on about last week with the mukbang stuff.
Yeah.
So they have to go into the industry, play one of these roles, and then they get cast for these roles. So it becomes that little spiral, and they have to stay that weight because otherwise they're not going to get cast for anything.
Yeah, this is bad.
Or you have people who come into the industry and don't fit anywhere, and then see that as like a niche, and then want to pack on loads of pounds to then get into that.
Yeah, so whichever way you look at it, it's not good.
No.
Because you don't want to be that guy or girl that's typecast as the fat person in Hollywood.
No.
Because then that just encourages you to
stay that way, yeah. So this actually hasn't been pushed through, I don't think, by, I think it was the Oscars or some sort of awards show, but some of these companies, Dove have essentially jumped on the bandwagon of a woke sort of movement that was saying this. They've tweeted it this week.
See, this is quite a broad issue, I think, because a lot of companies do this now. Where they come out with these outlandish statements about inclusivity and diversity, and at face value, they sound great.
Yeah.
But then if you unpack it, they're actually basically encouraging people to be fat.
Yeah.
Which isn't what we want.
Exactly, and it happens with a lot of brands, even sort of fitness brands. Like Gymshark had a little thing with it a few years ago, if you remember, where they were trying to make their models a little bit more body positive, which I'm all for, but there's a there's a limit to it, right?
Yeah, it's a tightrope, isn't it?
Exactly. But anyway, that's mine.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
There you go. 2 helmets there for you.
Happy days.
Same again next week. Right, let's get stuck in.
Okay, masculinity
to the
time.
masculinity crisis. I'll be honest, of the podcasts that we've done so far, this has caused me the most internal strife.
Yeah, it's been the biggest headache for me as well to prep for. I think because it's not essentially a specialist subject for either of us, right? So obesity last week, we both kind of experienced in that kind of realm.
Yeah.
The other stuff about the Marines, much easier for me to talk about. So yeah, it feels like I've had to prep for like a completely different thing that I wasn't really fammed up on before.
So another caveat that I should add, well, before we get into the dregs of the
20 minutes of
conversation.
caveats.
Yeah. My research for this podcast was basically this book.
Yeah.
Called Of Boys and Men, Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It.
Mm-hmm.
Good read. Mm-hmm. Suggest that to anyone. Most of the stats that you will hear in this podcast have been lifted from this book.
Cool.
So if you've got any issues with it,
take it up with
the author, not me. There you go.
Yeah. Don't shoot the messenger. That's what I was trying to say there.
I've got no skin in the game. You've listened to quite a few podcasts.
Yeah, I'm fairly interested in the subject anyway. So, listening to people like Jordan Peterson and Chris Williamson who have kind of popularised it a little bit in recent times. Certainly when they've had interviews together, have been talking about these kind of topics. And there was actually a podcast last week that came out on modern wisdom with Mike Thurston. And Mike Thurston does a bit about that now, about masculinity and that sort of stuff. So it obviously naturally went on to that. So yeah, I've just got a vested interest in it. It's
all the rage, lad. That's
all
why we're jumping on it. No, I'm joking. It's
we're like Dove, we're jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah, so there are a few indicators that I've pulled out of that book that kind of demonstrate the masculinity crisis that I think we should go through before we get into any potential solutions or consequences.
Let's go for it.
So the first one is the fact that in the US and the UK, and I'm not sure about the rest of the kind of Western developed world, but girls now are outperforming boys in education.
I've heard this, yeah.
So historically, education was obviously very patriarchal. So men outperformed girls. I mean, like when did girls start going to school in the UK?
I don't actually think it was that long ago. In the grand scheme.
Yeah. Anyway, historically,
I think it was like mid-90s, maybe early 90s.
Education very patriarchal. Since the 1970s, though, legislation has actually reversed this trend. So in the 1970s, we realised that kind of females massively underrepresented in school and higher education.
Yeah.
Put loads of legislation through.
Yeah. Which
has now actually reversed the trend.
So now females are outperforming males.
Yes.
Which could be an issue if it's sort of, blown out into the future, but I don't think at face value that sounds like an issue.
So at the moment, the scales have just tipped in favour of girls, but I think people are worried that if it goes unaddressed, then we get to a point where it used to be with
the other way around.
The other way around.
Yeah, so it gets the same. It gets to the same amount of separation.
So in the US, 57% of bachelor degrees are now awarded to women.
Yeah.
Women now receive the majority of law degrees, which is up from 1 in 20 in 1970.
Right. Okay.
So if you think how far that's coming,
5%
in 5 decades.
The majority is huge. So
that's mental. In the UK, 58% of bachelor degrees now awarded to women, so very similar levels to the US.
Yeah.
40% of teenage girls go to college in the UK compared to only 29% of boys.
Right. Okay. That's a stark statistic.
Yeah. So that's not just higher. That's not just university. That's just college in general. That's basically
that's just anything after school.
That's post GCSE.
Yeah. So that's an issue. I think the thing about the females not getting more bachelor degrees than men is just that they're essentially then more desirable to the workplace. And if you farm that out into the next 10 years of someone's life, how easy it is for them to find employment and therefore to find purpose and structure in their life just becomes more and more difficult. If that continues, like you were saying, if that separation was to continue from 57%, 58% to like 70 or 80-20, if it keeps on going, then we just end up with a society of lots of overqualified females and underqualified males, which means that any industry that's academic, like teaching or law or medicine, all of those kind of really important things in society are now dominated by women. While again not an issue on face value, I'd say leaves a big gap for males.
The thing is, I think what we have to establish here is that we're not trying to say that we should reverse the gains that women have made in education.
No, of course not.
It's not a zero-sum game. You don't have one winner and loser. Like, we want them both to be winning.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of...
It should really be 50-50 if in an ideal world.
Yeah, it's not a case of taking our foot off the gas with females now.
Yeah.
It's a case of, right, we've got it right.
Let's ramp it up for blokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's mirror it.
Exactly.
Right, okay, so that's education. This is in the workplace now. So there's been a structural shift in Western economies in the past 50 years, hasn't there?
Yeah.
Thanks to automation, technology.
Yeah, well, loads of factors. Internet.
Globalisation.
Yeah.
And on a whole, that has shafted men more than women.
Okay.
If you think about traditional kind of manual jobs, labour-intense jobs.
Well, they're going to get replaced first, aren't they, by
exactly
automation.
So this isn't necessarily a case of lots of legislation helping women out. This is just a case of kind of men being shafted by
and
globalisation.
It's obviously not on purpose and anything like that, but or intentional. But it's probably just the fact that, like you were saying, men would lend themselves to laboursome jobs. The first and easiest things to replace with automation is a laboursome job. So that's what gets replaced, and therefore men get replaced.
So I haven't got any statistics for the UK, but for the US, male labour force participation has dropped 7% over the last 50 years.
Okay.
From 96% participation to 89% now.
Right.
So I think that means that of males in the US that could be working, only 89% of them are, basically, which is a drop from 96%. But the issue here, right? I think this is part of the reason why people are struggling to accept the masculinity crisis as an issue, is that the top earners in the world are still men.
Very true.
So there is a very small substrata of hyper successful, high performing rich men.
Yeah.
And to a larger extent, they still control the world.
Well, they outnumber women in that bracket.
Exactly.
So like the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are majority men.
100%.
But there's so many factors that go into that. It's not just prejudice, and prejudice is maybe one of the things, but it's probably a part of like a 1 in 20 of factors in terms of that determine who's at the top of those businesses.
And I'm not saying that all people do this, but I would say that of the resources that I've come across, people that are kind of anti-masculinity crisis or who are refusing to engage in the debate,
or on the other side,
normally draw on this example as a reason why we shouldn't be taking it seriously.
Yeah.
All the top earners are still men. But that masks out... Yeah.
How many men does that apply to? There's still a very, very, very minute amount of men that are in that position.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, my man's that just predisposes me to be a CEO.
So this is like the top 0.001% of the world.
Yeah.
I think what we have to park that and accept that, yes, that is the case. But for the average man now, they haven't got it so good.
No, exactly, because I think this leads into another thing with social media. If you're talking about women trying to find a partner, right? So because now there's social media and they can now reach out to anyone and they can make themselves known to anyone, they can almost shoot upwards a little bit more than they maybe could before. And so the average man who's now maybe working like a normal job, has a normal car, all this sort of stuff is now not desirable because they've got access and kind of can see these other men who are like, they can get access to footballers or they can get access to people who have really, really large status. Yeah. Rather than before there was so much connectivity in the world, they would have to have access to the bloke who worked in Starbucks and earned 25 grand a year, But now he hasn't got a fucking chance because they're now looking at him like, well, you're not driving a fucking Lamborghini, so I don't want to know.
What's that stat that you used to pull out? I think you got it from Chris Williamson, where it's like the bottom 80% of women now fight over like the top 20% of blokes.
Yeah.
Is that it?
And then it switches, and so that obviously leaves a huge amount of blokes unmated, and then the rest of the women are fighting over them, and then it kind of it all goes to shit. But I've got a statistic about this. It's not the direct one that you was on about, but it's similar. So it's from Tinder match rates. So obviously they've vetted male and female Tinder match rates.
Yeah.
So out of 1,000 swipes, a female profile would get 70% match rate, which is quite high.
Yeah.
The equivalent male profile would get 27% matches.
Wow.
So that's a huge disparity, a huge difference. So you imagine the ease at which women will go through and just be swiping right and then hit the match. And even for like an ego boost, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
If you're a bloke and only, what is that, 1 in 4? No, not even that. So, 27% is not high, and you're going to be swiping thinking, fuck, I thought she was below me, and then I'm going, fuck. And then you keep getting rejected by people you think, this should not be happening. So that again probably wouldn't happen in the real dating world. Like if you were to go to a bar or whatever and chat people up, you probably wouldn't have that failure rate. If you were to go to a bar and try and pick women up, right?
He's talking from experience.
This is not from experience. There is no way. Well, most people wouldn't have a 1 in 4 success rate. You're not going to go up to 4 people and have one person even give you the time of day, which is what a match is.
True. It's a lot easier to reject people on the internet, though,
exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So
people's true colours emerge.
And there's a caveat from this as well. So there's another drop down.
Have another caveat. Is that the third or the fourth now?
There's another drop down from this. So in the last year, the number of men reporting no sex within the last 12 months has tripled from 8 to 28%. So now, it used to be, 12 months ago, 8% of blokes reported no sex within the last 12 months, and that's now tripled to 28%.
I'm glad you've said that.
Right.
Not 'cause I'm a virgin. Made me feel better. Right, because that feeds into what I was then going to say about the changing position of fathers.
Okay.
So, you've just basically said there that the dating game for men is going down the Swanee.
Yeah. Basically.
This is also backed up in birth rates.
Okay.
So today, 40% of births take place outside of marriage, up from 11% in 1970.
It's huge.
So 11% of births in mental. And well, the guy in that book seems to think that it's because women now feel that they don't need a father figure.
Right. Okay.
To raise children, they can do the role of kind of mother and father.
Well, and they can up to a point. I think it just
he's not. He wasn't criticising it. He was just saying. I think that is now just a kind of accepted norm.
I think it does leave a gap though in that child's upbringing, though, doesn't it? If you to again project it out into the future of, the formative years of that child's life.
100%. I think like this dad deficit that you now have
deficit
is like. I mean, you can raise kids without a father, but at the same time, like they need a paternal figure.
Yeah.
Be it a teacher or an actual dad, or like a grandfather,
stepdad, or whatever.
Particularly if you're raising boys.
Yeah.
Because what else? What other frame of reference have they got to go on?
Yeah, exactly. And then you don't have any traditional or old school values to instilled into you, depending on the mother and what their kind of proclivity is towards.
So they're the indicators that are pointing to this general kind of confusion around what it means to be a male in 2023. Go on.
And by the way, I think women are almost having an equally bad time of it. In the grand scheme of things, and in the dating market, the statistics seem to show that yes, they get 70% match rates. However, those that click through for a date, the trickle through for a sale, if you will, if you're going to bring it into a marketing perspective, is very minimal. So that while they're experiencing more joy on the front end, the trickle down effect still isn't painting them in a good light. So
Yeah.
we should establish that women are having a crap time as well.
Yeah.
But there's still,
Can't stress this enough. We're not misogynist. The whole point of this podcast is not to shit on women. We've just noticed, and had kind of informal conversations, through podcasts and reading. This is an issue.
Yeah.
It would make an interesting topic to talk about.
Exactly.
Right, okay. So I want to talk about political failure now.
Okay. As always.
Shock. He's banging the politics drum again. So I think both the political left and right are failing to acknowledge and address this.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't heard any, outside of kind of informal media, like podcasting and social media, I haven't heard any of the mainstream media really talking about this, other than Piers Morgan.
But for exactly the point that we've risen, I think it's a very divisive issue.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And as soon as you mention the masculinity crisis, people think you're a misogynist.
Yeah.
That you're just trying to put women down, and that's not the case.
No, it's just pointing out that men are having a shit time.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is backed up by a ton of statistics, which we're going to get into.
So again, I'm generalising here, but these are my opinions anyway.
Yeah.
So the political left tend to pathologise naturally occurring aspects of masculine identity.
I agree. Yeah.
So anyone that kind of demonstrates any type of
traditional masculinity
is pathologised. They've got an issue. They need help.
Yeah.
They need sterilising.
Yeah.
These are extreme.
Let's push them down. Push them to the side. They don't need that. It's too alpha. It's too out there.
And this is where
too aggressive.
This is where our friend, the word toxic masculinity comes into things.
Okay, here we go. Yeah.
They've been tarnished with the toxic masculinity brush.
Yeah.
And granted, there is a lot of toxic masculinity in society. Of
course, there is. Yeah, it's still it is a thing, but I think it's been multiplied out into something that
if you just tarnish everything as toxic, then you're not being constructive to the debate, are you?
You're just not addressing any of the issues, are you?
Right, okay, so that's the political left. The political right do acknowledge the masculinity crisis. This is an issue, but they overemphasise the importance of biological sex differences. So they go too far the other way.
Well, too far right.
Yeah, literally.
On the fence.
Blokes should be blokes.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the 1950s when
your
dad went down the coal mine, your mum stayed at home.
So there's not too much in the centre.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where we come into it.
Exactly. So you either got too far left, where they're afraid to talk about it, and it's not an issue until it rears its ugly head in the form of whatever, or too far right in that they just want people to go back to their original gender roles, traditional gender roles, and just not experience any of the males not show any emotion or not talk about any emotions, which is obviously problematic, and females just go back to the kitchen like you were saying.
That's bollocks.
Yeah.
That's not feasible in the modern world, and we wouldn't want that.
Exactly.
So what we need to do is we need to acknowledge that there's an issue.
And it's not productive.
But find a workable solution for the modern day.
Yes, agreed. Which is what we're here for.
Which is why, exactly. Harvard, if you've got any scholarships going, I am open to offers.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So the consequences of the masculinity crisis, where does it leave in men?
Yeah.
I have a few thoughts on this.
Yes, I have a pretty stark statistic about suicide, which I'll get into.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So male suicide is higher than female suicide in pretty much every single country that I looked at. So there's a table online you can go and view, which I might put up actually on the edit. is countries, and then they're ranked by
death.
Well, yeah, ranked by numbers of suicide per 100,000, and it goes male, female. It goes total male, female. So it's every single country has like 5x male to female.
Yeah.
So in Britain, it's something like 10.6 males per 100,000 compared to, I think it's 3.5 females. So that's a huge disparity.
That's roughly what I've got as well.
Yeah, and so that is a massive thing, and that's consistent throughout all the nations I looked at. And then just a little statistic here, which is pretty crazy and worrying, I guess. Suicide's the biggest killer of men under the age of 30, and the biggest killer of men under the age of 50. So that's two age demographics that are in the workplace, in the work environment, and suicide's their biggest killer. It's also the leading cause of death for boys in the age brackets from 10 to 19.
Yeah, that's
That's
scary. That's
scary,
not good
innit?
because that's young men.
Yeah. Well, that's not even young men. 10 to 19.
Well, that's kids.
That's insane. So, I mean, for it to be the leading cause of death in those people is insane.
Yeah, so this feeds into mental health issues. And this is... So I've got a working theory at the moment that there is a spectrum of kind of disillusionment that men feel towards their lack of purpose in society. And at the one end, you've got kind of mental health issues, depression, suicide.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the flight response.
Yes.
That's the kind of unplugging yourself from the matrix and just kind of detaching yourself.
Yeah.
And then at the other end, we've got the fight response, which is misogyny.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, right, I'm being shafted, women are to blame.
Women are to blame. And it's looking for someone to blame that I think
Yeah, this is the issue. Right, we'll get onto that anyway.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit more about depression and suicide. Did you know that females are more likely to be diagnosed as depressed and to attempt suicide?
Yes. So this is something I was actually going to touch on.
We need to dig deeper into this.
Yeah, so I think females experience more negative emotion than males. However, as we've just said, males have significantly higher suicide rates. And from what I've read and what I've heard, this is because males use more lethal means.
Yes.
Yeah, so one of the masculine traits, if you like, is aggressiveness and kind of being aggressive. And to that point, I think when they're making the decision to take their own life, then they choose more deadly means. And that's why, while women attempt it more often, men are more quote-unquote successful with it.
Yeah. So in talk about depression, I read that women are more likely to talk about their mental health issues, so are therefore more likely to be diagnosed as depressed.
Yeah.
Whereas men will just suffer in silence.
Interesting, yeah. I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah, and then in relation to the actual intent behind suicide, like you said, this is particularly the case in the US as well, because the majority of gun owners are male.
Right. Yeah, that's a separate issue anyway, isn't it?
That is a separate issue.
Having access to something that
but it feeds into what you're saying about more lethal means. I think statistically women are more likely to try and overdose.
Yeah.
Which obviously can, like...
Well, it's not exact science,
is
it?
Yeah, exactly,
Like,
you can throw it up or, someone can get you in time or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. A gun doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
So that's... And obviously these are extremes. Like, you don't have to, people don't necessarily become depressed and suicidal.
No, you don't.
But I feel like there is a lot of men that are just kind of giving up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily because they feel like,
they're lost or
like the male doesn't have a... not everyone's pondering deep philosophical questions, are they?
No, maybe that's part of the issue, but... I don't think people stop and think about these kind of issues enough, maybe, and they just kind of plod through life, just taking one day at a time and almost not even thinking about what's happening, and then it snowballs and snowballs, and then it just becomes an issue, and it becomes depression, or it manifests as suicidal ideation or whatever it is, because I think people are too happy to just like mosey through life, not being self-aware enough about these things.
So I guess that I hadn't even thought of it like that, to be fair. But it's almost like the fact that they can't pinpoint it to a certain aspect or thing almost makes it worse.
Yeah, because you can't then address it.
It's almost like when you're ill. When you have like a physical pain or something, but you're not quite sure what it is. So just because you can't diagnose it properly, it almost makes it worse. Yeah,
because you can't then go and do something about it. You can't.
Yeah. Well, if you take
actions to then...
You go to the GP and they say, it's such and such, here's some antibiotics. You almost feel better immediately.
Well, in that placebo effect, you will feel better. Even if they've misdiagnosed you, this has been studied as well. If they've misdiagnosed you and given you the wrong fucking antibiotics, you'll still feel better because you've been seen.
By a medical professional.
Yeah, and that happens with, with people going to therapy and then having... antidepressants.
Yeah.
The same thing happens. It doesn't work in the long run, obviously, because it's not a physical thing, it's a psychological thing, so it just rears its ugly head again. But when they get issued those antidepressants, a lot of people report feeling better even though they've been shown actually scientifically to not actually do a lot.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Anyway, that's depression and suicide. That was a bit bleak. Time now to get equally bleak in the manosphere.
Okay.
Do you know what the manosphere is?
So, from what I understand, it's people like Andrew Tate and that kind of red pill.
Yeah, it's kind of like a misogynistic echo chamber.
Yeah, and we've mentioned this in a podcast. I don't know what we're talking about, but it's similar. And I think social media has a massive part to play here, because if you expose yourself to certain style of content, that's what you're going to see, and then you're going to see more of that, and then you're going to see more of that type of thing, and then it's just going to feed into this echo chamber.
I'll be honest, I think researching for this podcast, we've inadvertently fallen into the manosphere.
Yeah, probably.
Because
that's what's out there.
I've come across a lot of Andrew Tate, Donald Trump content.
Yes.
Like, my algorithm now feeds me that because it thinks I want it.
And for some reason, and it happens with Andrew Tate content more than anything else. I think it's because so many accounts are posting it and repurposing it and reposting it.
But I thought Andrew Tate himself got deplatformed.
He did.
So these are all basically just fanboy accounts, aren't they?
Yeah, these are all just his whatever fans, and it's because it gets loads of views. If you put a video of Andrew Tate up and a quote that he said that's controversial, that is going to go really well for your algorithm. You're going to get tons of views, and therefore tons of ego from that. You're going to feel good from that.
It's like a cult.
It is massively. And he's actually just been released this week, so this is quite topical now.
Yeah. Do you want to cover who he is for anyone?
If anyone doesn't know,
for anyone that lives under a rock.
I don't know how you wouldn't know, but yeah.
So he's kickboxing champion turned sex trafficking influencer. That's how I summarised him.
I'm sure he'd be happy with that.
As of December 2022, he was being detained in Romania on suspicion of rape, sex trafficking, and organised crime. He's now under house arrest.
Yeah, he's just been released from that sentencing, hasn't he? He's now under house arrest.
He's a weird guy, though.
Pending release, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I get bogged down into Romanian legal system.
No, you don't want to do that.
His rise to notoriety began when he went on all these...
Big Brother, right?
Yeah, he went on Big Brother. He went on a few more game shows, I think.
He was chasing fame a lot. I think that was what part of it.
This is where my issue with Andrew Tate begins. And it goes on a long way, but this is where it starts, because he's got to a platform now where he can reach a lot of people, and a lot of people define him as being successful.
Yeah.
But like at one point, he was that guy that was clambering for fame. Yeah. And that is the person that he now shits on as being kind of unmasculine.
Brokey, or whatever he called him. And he was that.
So he's a hypocrite, effectively.
He was chasing status. The band. He was chasing status. He was chasing status, and he was chasing kind of
D&B.
He was chasing, I guess, recognition from his peers, men, women, whoever, and he was successful in that, I guess. But
does this come from a position of insecurity?
Absolutely,
100%.
Yeah, I think though, you could probably vet 1,000 quote unquote successful people, and I reckon about 80% of them are dragged through by insecurity.
Yeah,
I think if you listen to Stephen Bartlett's podcast enough, which I definitely do, he obviously has some of the most successful people in their field on that podcast, and what it kind of boils down to, that why they're so successful is they're dragged through by this insecurity to be, whether it be like they were ignored as a kid by their dad or whatever it is, and now it manifests that they've got to work to get recognition from whoever, because it's this kind of insecurity thing.
True.
So I think it's consistent across a lot of high performers.
Firstly, I just want to say, in no way am I trying to suggest that Andrew Tate is successful.
Yeah, true.
He's literally a sex trafficking rapist.
True. He's monetarily is successful.
Secondly, I'm sure Stephen Bartlett really appreciates the comparison.
That's fine. Yeah. He'll be on his show next.
No, I know what you're trying to say though. It's almost like he's faked it until he made it.
Yeah.
He is the guy that he now takes the piss out of in all of his viral content.
Yeah.
You know, he's the brokey, as you said.
He was, yeah. And now somehow he's come out the other end of it.
But it would be far too nuanced of him to say, I used to be that guy. He's now
this is the issue.
He's now like judge, jury, and executioner, isn't he?
Yeah.
He decides the narrative.
But yeah, he absolutely does, because he's got so much market share over the manosphere. But because he's trying to go viral, he has to pick out the most controversial, out of context clips and put them forward as his point of view.
It's weird as well, because he kind of says that he's the saviour of these kind of like insecure men, but he's also exploiting them for monetary gains.
Yeah, that's true.
with his Hustler University.
Yeah, that's fucking mad.
So he's like, I'll help you if you buy into this pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
because that's what it is.
Yeah.
But what he's actually doing is he's making them more insecure, because he's taking their money, which makes them more broke, and he's not giving them any fucking answers.
No, I don't understand that. And have you heard of the commission scheme that he's got going? I think it's something like, if you get 50 people into the Hustlers University, you get a certain amount of...
Yeah, it's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
it's just all based on commission.
Well, so what happens is, exactly like you said, a pyramid scheme is one person gets in, they want this bonus, and so then they have to try and get 50 other people in, they want this bonus, then it just becomes massive, and it just grows and grows and grows and grows.
So HS TikTok's been doing this as well.
Yeah.
He's like Andrew Tate light.
Yeah.
He's like the protege Andrew Tate. Yeah, literally. So he's basically been exposed a lot as well for this pyramid scheme that he's running, because it's kind of...
He's doing trading, isn't he? It's fucking...
It wasn't Andrew Tate's all about trading as well, though?
I don't know, it was just how to make side hustles, I think. I don't know.
Let's be honest, he was throwing a lot of shit at the wall.
Yeah,
trading,
probably a lot of crap.
Trading probably comes into it.
Yeah, but it comes into most things that are
but we think we need to talk about trading.
Yeah, because we need to cover that. That seems to only have emerged in the last few years.
I think this is one of the weirder symptoms of the masculinity crisis.
I agree.
This kind of pseudo knowledge around trading.
Yeah.
People talk about trading like it's a learnt profession.
Like it's a fine art.
It's fucking smoke and mirrors.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
bollocks.
It's absolute bollocks. If you've seen Wolf of Wall Street, you'll know that.
Yeah.
Like, they're just guessing, and it's basically you're a salesman. You're a charlatan salesman, because...
You're just a charlatan.
Yeah. Because you're selling to whoever it is buying the stocks or whatever. I don't know how it fucking works. But you're selling to whoever it is buying the stocks that this stock's going to go up, even though you have no fucking idea whether it's going to go up, down, or wherever.
Yeah.
So, that's on the proper side of trading as well, on Wall Street. This is like a dumbed down...
Crypto trading.
Yeah, this is like... I don't even have any exposure to this. I don't expose myself to any of this bollocks. So, apart from when I get, like... You know when you get people who follow you that have, like, their name and FX?
Yeah.
You know, they have FX in their bio.
If there was ever a red flag, right, it's when people have that, that little graph emoji in their bio.
Yes.
When it's like stock prices rising.
Yeah,
it just means you're a helmet.
Yeah.
No one looks at that and thinks, fucking hell.
Yeah.
He's a trader.
Rented an Audi R8 to have a photo shoot with. And that's what they pollute their Instagram with.
Jordan Belfort didn't have that emoji in his bio.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And we can learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
And he misled people anyway. But that's a whole
the psychology behind it, though, I find fascinating, because it does tend to attract a certain character of male.
Well, it's not attracting females, from what I've seen.
It's not attracting females, but it's all
interesting.
The calibre of male it's attracting is subpar, let's say.
I would agree. I'd agree with that, but I think it's only spawned because there's this vacuum of...
This is what I mean.
Structure and purpose for blokes. And I think men... I'm not saying women don't, right? But men need, I think, to be deemed at being good at something. I think you have to have a discernible skill, otherwise you feel emasculated.
To be fair, I think there is an element of herd mentality going on.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of people jump on the bandwagon because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think that people kind of cling on to it because they, like you said, think, well, they cotton on to the fact that it's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
And they think, I can be an expert in this. Because you only need one lucky... I don't know, is it trading? It's like
betting, isn't it?
Like Yu-Gi-Ohs. You only need to get one good card.
That's the last thing I trade.
Yeah, that's my reference point and all this. You only need to get like Blue Eyes White Dragon and you're fucking laughing, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you can go off to everyone else at how you got Blue Eyes White Dragon was a fine science, and you knew exactly what you were doing.
Yeah.
You could recreate it, and then you sell that system to everyone else, and all of a sudden you're
Fucking
you're
hell,
a
that is
wanker.
the best, genuinely best trading analogy I've ever heard.
True, so true. But I do think it spawns from that thing of males need to be deemed as skillful in something or expert in something. I think the reason that's an issue now, and it maybe wasn't 20, 30, 40 years ago, is again linked with social media. Seems like I have a gripe with social media, even though I make my money off it. But anyway.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
But anyway, I think because originally we would be in groups of less people, maybe 100, 150 people in a company,
Tribe.
or in a tribe, or whenever it was, before Instagram, and now we're exposed to the entire world. We're exposed to 7 billion people or whoever.
Yeah.
So if you think you're decent at CrossFit, right, but you go on your Explore page and all of a sudden you've got the world champion at CrossFit and all these other people who are better than you, it's like, oh fuck, well I thought I was half decent at this, but actually I'm number 3,000 in the world, and I actually don't feel very good about that. And I think that's a metaphor obviously for everything else, but you know, if you think you're earning a decent amount of money, so you think you're earning 50 grand a year, you think that's good to go, and then you go on Instagram and all of a sudden someone's earning fucking 6 million a year, and it's like, oh shit, well, is that comparison thing?
There's always someone doing better than you.
Yeah, but you only know that now because you're exposed to it.
Yeah. You live in ignorance is bliss, isn't it? Literally. Anyway, I've got a game for us to lighten the mood. We've gone quite dark today. We need to bring us back up.
Right, I like games.
Bring us back up to surface level. This game is to exemplify how much of a helmet our friend Mr. Tate is.
Okay, as we've been speaking about.
It's called Tate or Bait.
Tate or Bait.
I've taken a selection of Andrew Tate quotes and a selection of quotes from popular fictional characters from Western popular culture. Yeah. I've mixed them all up.
Okay.
It's your job to decide whether it's Tate or Bait.
Got it. Let's go.
Tate or Bait, quote 1. Are you ready?
Yeah.
If you ain't got a Lambo, you're a shit muncher.
That's Tate.
It is Tate! Yes. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's because it was sports car reference.
Yeah,
I think that sold it.
He loves dropping a sports car reference, doesn't he?
Put sports car game.
It's his equivalent of Sniper Game.
Yeah, from episode 2.
He's stolen loads of supercars in Romania.
Yeah,
and now he's flexing on them, basically.
With them. What colour's your Bugatti?
So, that was quote 1, Tate or Bait. Quote 2, are we ready?
Yeah.
The problem with TV is, if one presenter is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed heterosexual man, the other must be a black Muslim lesbian.
Let's go Bait.
It is Bait.
It is Bait. That could have been easily.
It could have been him. Yeah, we were flying close to the
from?
wind there. Do you want to know who said that?
Yeah.
Jeremy Clarkson. In his newspaper column about 13 years ago.
That's hilarious. As if.
Jeremy Clarkson of Clarkson's Farm fame.
Yeah.
Doesn't like black lesbian... What was it? Black Muslim lesbians?
Hasn't been cancelled yet, though.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, give it time.
Right, okay. Tate or Bait. Quote 3. Are we ready? Mm-hmm. 2 for 2 so far.
Yeah.
I'm
on a roll.
There's 6 in total.
Okay.
This is for 50%.
Let's keep going.
I was living the life, just banging chicks and eating cabbage.
That can't be Tate. That's got to be Bait.
It's Bait.
Yeah,
he's got to.
You see, no chance.
His algorithms feeding him
Yeah,
Tate constantly.
I know exactly what's up.
He can now channel he's in a Tate. Yeah, that was actually Glenn Quagmire from Family Guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not similar.
Not sure which episode. If you're a Norse, let me know.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Similar character.
Tate or Bait. Quote 4. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I've loaded up with another soother.
3 for 3.
If you're a 55 kilo female, I'll pick you up with one hand by your titty. Make of that what you will.
That's got to be Tate.
It's Tate.
Is it?
Yeah.
Actually. As if he said that. That's mental.
If we just unpack that for a second.
Do you know what? Like, when that was?
I don't know.
Can't be
As
recent.
with a lot of Andrew Tate quotes, I think you'd struggle to trace the
pin it down.
the original source.
Yeah.
But I'm told it did leave his mouth. Then again,
That's
take
insane.
that with a pinch of salt because of a lot of things leave his
Yeah,
mouth.
that's true. I can't believe you said that. That's hilarious.
Right, so you're 4 for 4 for the moment.
Buzzing.
You're going great.
Smashing.
You're going great
Smashing
guns.
these.
Are we ready for 5?
I'm ready for 5. 5 for 5.
I will not administer CPR unless you're a hot female. If you're some fat dude and you just had a heart attack, you're going to die.
That's got to be him as well.
It is Tate! Yeah.
Surely that's Tate.
Tate there with strong feelings around obesity.
Yeah. I'm on. Should I know on next week? He wasn't released from prison though.
That's mental. He said that.
That's mad.
Even if you're thinking it, there's that filter, isn't there, between brain and mouth?
He has that. That's the problem. Yeah.
No.
I think that's the issue.
That
Down to the issue.
is one of many issues with Andrew Tate.
He hasn't got that filter system between what I thought and what I should say.
You go in great guns.
Okay, 5 for 5.
I'm channeling my inner Anton Deck now. It's like game show vibes. Is he going to go 6 for 6?
I reckon I'm confident. Let's go.
Okay. When a girl tells you how many guys she slept with, multiply it by 3, and that's the real number.
That's got to be Tate.
Oh, it's
No.
Bait! He's got him on the final hurdle.
Final corner.
Do you want to know who said that?
Go for it.
Steve Stifler from American
Really?
Pie. Yeah.
I actually don't not agree with that.
It was mental that you thought that Andrew Tate theoretically could have said that.
Yeah,
Like,
I
it's
know.
quite plausible that it could have left his mouth.
Yeah, he could. Well, it's just like on trend with a lot of other stuff that he has said. You know, like the I don't know. So
That's why I threw it in there. It's a
5 out of
bit of a
6.
curveball at the end.
I think 5 out of 6 is good to go. That's good.
I'm impressed with
Yeah,
that.
that was good. That was good.
So there you go. I think that was deeply worrying that men find solace in the words of people like Andrew Tate.
Yeah, it is.
Given how ludicrous a lot of the things he says are.
Do you think it's because there's not a massively kind of cemented good role models for men
Yes, I think this is...
in modern society? Do you think that's why he's gained such market share?
Yes. So I feel like now a lot of people shy away from displaying
Masculine traits.
masculine traits, but he's doubled down on it, so people flock towards him.
Yeah.
You know,
I can
he's
think
like the
of-
only market trading in town.
Yeah. I can think of a lot of decent male role models though. I think of a similar age as well to him.
Oh yeah, 100%. But what I'm saying is that they don't shout it from the rooftops.
That's true.
It's it's almost like he said he's a good male role model so much that people now just certain people now believe it.
I think a lot of it is negativity bias. You familiar with this?
Yes.
Yeah. So
But explain.
this is social media again, where negative comments and negative tweets or whatever it is going to be pushed in the algorithm far more than positive stuff. So because Andrew Tate is controversial for one, and a lot of what he says is of the negative, he's spiralling negatively, isn't it?
Yeah.
It either attaches to a small minority of blokes, and they're like, absolutely, they resonate with this, and they're going to follow him, you know, they're going to watch his content, share his content, all this. If it reaches someone else who maybe doesn't agree with it, it outrages them, completely ostracising them, polarisation. And then they're also going to pick that content up. They're going to watch it however many times because it's outraging them. They're going to send it to their friends, put it in the group chat saying, have you seen this? Then clicks, likes, all that sort of stuff. And that's how these kind of people grow, because they're polarising. So
Yeah.
a certain minority might like them, a large majority will hate them, but it doesn't really matter because their only goal is to reach large amounts of people.
What do you think will happen to Andrew Tate now?
I think he's on his way back, you know.
Same.
I think he's coming
Worryingly.
back. I think he'll get a platform again and he'll be good to go.
I think figures like this actually thrive from the idea that they're fugitives.
Yeah,
Because
because
it
plays into his brand a little bit.
It
Doesn't
plays into his brand. It feeds into the narrative that he's kind of anti-establishment. He knows the truth. It's the same with Donald Trump. Like he's thriving off this court case at the moment
Yeah.
because it's just confirming everything that he said for the past God
I think
knows
it's
how many
completely
years.
undermined the official like the government in Romania especially, but like, you know, the official route of thinking, don't worry about it because the legal system's going to take care of it.
Yeah,
Whereas they've taken care of it and now he's out again. So
Yeah.
they've actually undermined themselves, haven't they?
yeah. It's almost like he's one step ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
I don't think he is because I don't think he's that clever.
No.
But like it just so happens that it's played right into his hands
Yeah.
because this is what he wants. He's got all the publicity he could ever ask for. He's now vindicated, so to speak.
From his sins. And he's also a household name now.
And he's a household name.
Like, my mum and dad know who he is.
Exactly.
At 60. Like, that's insane. Like, he's not just now a TikTok sensation. He's also now been on the main news channels and that sort of thing. So his fame, whether it be good or bad, has still skyrocketed.
So I think, like you were saying with polarisation, like, a lot of people will now be more repulsed than ever by him. But the people that do buy into what he says will be more loyal than ever.
Yeah, exactly. And again, those people who are repulsed will still watch his stuff because it triggers them.
100%.
People like that.
Yeah. Well, we like that.
Yeah.
He triggers me, but still, it's like a car crash. You can't take your eyes off it.
Exactly. And that is negativity bias, as we've said.
So watch this space. Will Andrew Tate return?
Yeah. I think by the time this podcast's out, we'll probably have an answer.
Yeah, probably with the monarch.
Yeah, true.
Knowing Andrew Tate.
He'll run the show.
Right, okay, so we've talked about the consequences of the masculinity crisis, or the ones that we've identified anyway.
Yeah.
We've talked about the indicators. I think we need to put some solutions on the table for people.
Just like we did with obesity.
Yeah, because it's all well shooting holes in other people's ships.
Yeah.
But if you're fucking sailing in a dinghy, I don't know where I'm going with this analogy. You're sailing in a dinghy, you're not really one to talk.
I thought you had that set out.
I was riffed.
That was fine. I think we need to set some clear solutions on the table. Let's have it.
So
first one.
We've both got an agreed one, which I think we should get out first. That's very on brand for us. And I've got two more left field ones.
And we did a little bit of market research with you guys who follow the Instagram page yesterday.
Oh yeah, thanks for reaching out to us, by the way. It was really interesting to hear people's perspectives on that.
It'll still be up now, but last I checked, it was a 76-24 split.
Yeah.
So 76 in favour percent, and 24 not in favour of national service. So national service for the able-bodied 18 plus for 2 years.
That you're right. You've set your market stall out. I was going to ask you to do that, but you've done it anyway. I'm glad. Right. Yeah. So national service, also known as conscription, is like obligatory military service for certain demographics within a society. Yeah. And
usually, it's, I guess, the purpose of it isn't to, galvanise men. Usually, the purpose of it is defence and to bolster the ranks of the military. I think pivot that. And let's have it to sweep up males who are 18 to 20 years old, just coming out of college, approaching the time when they're gonna have to grow up or man up, if you're allowed to say that still. Then, and they've actually now got clear structure, clear discipline. They've got a community of men around them and men and women around them who are going through the same adversity. And that's hugely powerful in those years. And I think if I'm not saying it'd answer every question, every issue, because obviously people would say, well, there'd be the disabled, or what if you've got asthma, or all these kinds of things, which obviously you'd have to take into account and maybe give those people different jobs or whatever. But what it would do is give younger men structure and discipline, which is what we need.
So a bit of history. We used to have national service.
When was it abolished in 1960?
Yes, but then people that deferred for education. So I think it carried on until 1963. Okay. But I think it ran until the late 1940s, until the early 60s. So the heat of the Cold War. So I think initially, when it was introduced in the UK, it was pragmatic. Cold War. Yeah. Shrinking army.
Let's bolster it.
Let's bolster it with reservists, effectively.
Yeah.
So I like what you're saying now. We repurpose it to give men a purpose. Yeah. And females. Yeah. I don't think it should
got a shrinking military.
I don't think it should just be for males. No, because if you look at, and this is the other weird thing as well. So national service now seems like a really outdated concept. The kind of thing that like a drunk Nigel Farage would say in a pub to someone. But even in Europe, it's still quite normalised.
It is quite, it's loads of places.
There's a spectrum of it. So like Scandinavia, it's quite rigorous. So like you actually have like a military role. Yeah. One of the guys, a guy reached out to us actually and told us about his service. He said it was like one of the best things he ever did. So that's good. So obviously they've got more skin in the game in the sense that Finland borders Russia.
Yeah, oh yeah. All the high north is
High north. They've got more on their plate geopolitically, but it's still good in the sense that when we were talking about education earlier and the fact that less lads are going to college.
Yeah.
This is great. Feed vocational skills into part of
life
military
skills.
service.
Yeah.
So my grandparents, both my granddads did national service. My one granddad was a gunner. Nice. I think he went to Libya. Nice. First time he'd gone abroad. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. That wouldn't have happened otherwise. My other granddad became a mechanic. Vocational skill.
Yeah. And now he's probably got... Is he a mechanic? Was he a mechanic?
Well, he was, yeah. Yeah, he was, exactly.
So yeah, I've got some... Well, Cyprus, Greece, Turkey all have national service. Sweden, Lithuania, like you said, Finland, Estonia, Austria. All of those countries still have national service. So we think of it as like you say, an outdated principle, but actually some of the most developed countries in Europe still have it. And like you say, it's a spectrum.
So at the one end of the spectrum, you've got like North Korea, where there's kind of shrouded mystery. You join the military at like 17, and
you're never seen again.
You never seen again. You won't leave. You never see like a penny for your troubles.
Yeah, exactly.
But then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got the Netherlands. So like they still have a legal obligation for national service. So like I think it's 18.
Yeah.
But it's not enforced.
Okay.
At all.
Interesting.
So when you're like 17 or 18, you receive a letter from the government saying like it's time to do...
Like your letter for Hogwarts.
Yeah. And like the Dursleys, everyone just fucking chins it off.
Really?
Yeah, it's not enforced at all.
That's crazy.
That's weird. So it's basically just a voluntary scheme you can
do. It's like a little shove rather than a push, isn't it?
Well, it's not even a shove. Yeah, it's like a blow on your back.
Go on, mate.
But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder why that is even in place. Why wouldn't they just have a application scheme like we do?
It does sit. I'll be honest, right? I'm not just in favour of national service. I wish we had it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way for you basically... people say, your 20s if you're trying stuff out. It's a great way to try something mental. And if you don't like it, you just walk away.
Yeah, well, it's 2 years. It's nothing.
Everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
So you may as well literally do the most outlandish thing you can.
Yeah, and also...
Join SF.
Yeah. Give it a go. We have no chavs though, will we?
But no, but this is where we go a bit Brexit party. I think national service would fill the vacuum left by all the cuts to youth services. That we've experienced over the past 13 years. You get these gammons and these boomers moaning that there are too many kids on the street, not realising that the party they vote for has cut all the youth services in the country. So there's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah. Especially if they're from like a poor background where they can't really. We were very lucky. We could do, we could join sports teams. We could be, in a community in that respect.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of places that isn't an option.
Yeah, if you're from like an underprivileged council estate, like parents working multiple jobs, no one's at home. Maybe they don't leave you in the home at your own. You're on the streets. Not a youth centre to go through. It got shut down. Like I think it would benefit people like that and give them. Kind of rudderless people. Yeah. It could potentially give them a purpose.
Direction.
Yeah.
And those people who maybe don't have other options could potentially go and make a career of it, couldn't they? Because they're given that opportunity.
This is what I mean. There's almost nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Because we're not saying that everyone has to go kind of like infantry, hard as nail soldier.
No, because it wouldn't suit everyone.
You don't even necessarily have to make it military. It could just be any public service.
True. Yeah.
You could be. You could join the police force, you could join the fire service, join the civil service, be a paramedic. You could just
help out and be a number.
Yeah, be a volunteer.
Yeah.
But it's that idea that you kind of giving people that teaching the value of public service, giving something back,
or just of service in general. Yeah. Because I think that's lost nowadays. A lot of people are out for themselves. They're just thinking about
individualistic.
What can I do to better my own, trajectory? But it gives you that kind of team working environment, I guess, and to be in a community as well, which is massive.
But if you look at it from the government perspective as well, it's mutually beneficial because they're also then getting, trained reservists.
Yeah.
So say like once you complete your military, your national service.
You're then out, but you're a reservist.
You're a reservist that you can be called upon if necessary, or you can then volunteer to rejoin. So that is beneficial from that sense as well. Like, everyone's a winner.
Yeah. Also, physically, link it back to fitness. You'd have a basic level at 18, which everyone should have at 18 years old, the ability to run a certain amount, the ability to lift your own body weight, the ability, just basic things that humans at that age should be able to do that now so many people at that age can't do. And if you want to do 2 years and fuck it off and become whatever, then go for it. But it gives you that foundation, because certainly I know, and you know this as well, that if you don't invest in your physical attributes when you're kind of in those early days, 18 through 30 really, if you don't 100%. Do anything, if you don't do anything from 18 to 30, and the amount of people we know who are like that, who are just resting on their laurels almost and not doing anything active to facilitate muscle building or strength or flexibility, whatever. After 30 comes, you're depreciating. You're a depreciating asset. So it puts that kind of attitude into them that we need to maintain physical fitness. Because how many Marines, from my experience, or people in the military who left at kind of an early age, kept up their physical endeavours?
Yeah,
so many.
I've gone on to achieve amazing things.
Well, that's true. Yeah, but I mean that's not even the requirement here. The requirement is that they're just basic levels of fitness.
It's true. Health is wealth.
Yeah,
and like if you invest in the early years, like you can just effectively maintain it.
Yeah, and the maintaining when you're 40, 50, 60 is much easier than it is to just get new
100%.
Get new ability. If you're trying to build muscle when you're 43 versus when you're 23, you're in trouble.
Well, you're fucking pissing in the wind, basically, aren't you?
Yeah, you've got to work so hard, and you've got to consider, this is going to tangent a little bit, but you've got to consider you'll have lifestyle impacts, you'll have kids, you'll have a wife, you have a job that's taking up loads of time. When you're 23, you don't have that, but you're choosing just to spend all your time down the pub and not invest into your physical health.
But I don't understand why this doesn't get more traction in like the political landscape.
It's not talked about at all.
Is it because people still associate it with it being a bit backwards?
I think so. I think because it would be literally going backwards.
But it's not but we've reimagined it, but people don't have that creativity, do they?
But as it's badged as conscription or national service, people would see that and just think no, because it's from 1960s.
This is why I think we need to rename it public service.
Okay.
Because then you can still
public service.
Because then you can still go down the armed forces route, but it makes it more accessible to other people as well. Because like we were saying, you could just volunteer if you wanted to. You don't need to go and fight in the front line.
No, exactly. I wouldn't want that either, because we need skilled people to do that.
Exactly.
But the other thing I will say, and this is again a little bit of a pseudo-scientific tangent, but anyway, see where you land on this. I think a large proportion of the masculinity crisis is predicated off the fact that testosterone levels are dropping.
Yes.
By a huge amount. And for many reasons, for kind of what we consume, diet and that kind of thing. But I think for a massive proportion of our age people, 25, whatever, mid-20s, it's because they're not engaging. So natural ways you can raise your testosterone include lifting weights, getting in the sun, improving your nutrition, hydrating.
Or just exercise in general.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I mean, there's loads of other things that go with that. But
basically the natural things that humans have kind of evolved to do.
Yeah, that we're losing
over hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, exactly. That we've just stopped doing because it's convenient to do so. And so again, if that's introduced in 18, 20 years old and you just maintain it, then you'll have a net higher level of testosterone, which plays into higher energy levels, better recovery, more muscle mass, better libido, all that kind of thing that breeds, a masculine man.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate, and I'm trying to think of a drawback.
A drawback would be
service. Are we paying them?
That's the drawback, isn't it? You'd have to, really, wouldn't you?
I don't know. Or you could do it voluntarily.
You could, but there'd be.
So when I did my master's degree, it was predominantly made up of me and loads of international students. One of the girls on my course was Norwegian, and they have national service. I can't remember, because I spoke our tutor here off about it basically. I can't remember whether she said they get paid for it or not.
I think some countries do, some don't.
I don't
think you'd need to, because you don't get paid for college, do you? And in that time in your life, from 18 to 20, if it was introduced then and not later, because later on you do need money, but you could pretty much just do it like a college education.
It's all about marketing. We market it as an educational opportunity.
Yes.
This is live brainstorming.
Exactly.
This is groundbreaking.
Yeah, so I think that's how you'd have to do it, and I think that would inspire less kickback from the woke parts of society, which would be like, you can't make people do things, you can't, people are free, you've got to have people do what they want to do and all this kind of stuff.
The trade-off is you give us 2 years of your life, but we give you qualifications in return.
Yeah. But
so it's like, you're not...
enough to some people. Some people just want to be able to just choose anything they want to do.
All these
want to go travelling.
All these woke people get in debt to go to university.
Yeah. Well, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, I know. I know, but like,
I think that would be the only kickback that I can think of anyway.
I think that would be a lot more popular than people think, because I think at the moment, like, the education system is so academically orientated.
Yeah,
there's just such a vacuum of vocational skills,
like actual practical life skills.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people shy away from public service work or the armed forces, because it has a bad name, wrongfully now. Yeah. Well, rightfully and wrongfully, like the Met's in deep at the moment. Let's not get onto that.
True, it's for a different episode.
But also because I've completely lost my train of thought.
The Met.
No, after that.
You were talking about. We were talking about how people would rebuttal the.
Yeah, because it's got a bad name. Oh yeah, that's the one. I've got it. So I think people have put off public service, particularly the armed forces, because they don't want to sign their life away. True. I think it's quite daunting.
Yeah,
minimum sign up time. So if you want to be like, especially if you want to go in as an officer now. So if you want to be like an officer in the RAF, so you have to like commit to like 10 years, 12 years service.
Probably, yeah, because they're investing so much into you. Yeah.
2 years, try it out. If you love it, great.
Dip your toe in the water.
Dip your toe in. If you don't like it, chin it off.
Exactly. And then you can go do what you want. But you've got those old school values, quote unquote, instilled into you. Because if, again, like we were saying, with the drop in fatherhood rates, if you've got no balance of father figure and mother figure in your upbringing up until that point, you then get thrust into a community full of people who are then in the same start state.
Yeah.
And now you're getting put onto you the values of discipline, of being punctual to things, of timekeeping, of determination, of pushing through when things get difficult. These kind of things that we have just lost now. Like Dana White says, and David Goggins obviously plays into his thing, says it as well. Like, it's so easy to be a savage these days because so many people are weak, and it's so true. Like, so many people just fall at the first hurdle and just don't try anything else. And it's because we haven't got those old school values instilled into us anymore, and because everything's so easy. If you want to just detach and escape your reality, you can. You just go on TikTok, bosh, you're there for 2 hours, bang, done. Or you turn on Netflix, done.
I think also it could potentially quench a lot of people's thirst for adventure and travel. You know, a lot of people kind of up sticks in like them like early to mid 20s and they just go travelling. I think potentially if they got a bit of travelling under their belt when they were doing national service, in the same way that my granddad got stationed in Libya for a bit.
Yeah, they've seen a bit.
They've met people outside, their ordinary life. Like, I think
saying this as someone who travelled really well with the Marines and then left and went travelling himself.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Some people would be the same, especially if you hadn't travelled before that.
Well, this is from someone that's never been travelling.
There you go.
So like neither of us are really qualified to talk about it.
True.
But I think that just could be another aspect as well. Anyway, big advocate of that.
Yeah, as you can tell, because we spent about half an hour talking about it.
We tuned in. Right, we'll quickly fire through my kind of left.
Let's go for
Well, they're not left field, but they're just ones that we haven't talked about.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Holding boys back one academic year.
Ooh. Okay, because they mature slower.
Mentally, particularly in adolescence, boys mature.
That's interesting.
Slower than girls.
Yeah, they do.
This was brought to my attention when I read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
You know, when he highlights that statistically, if you're the oldest person in your class, you're more likely to achieve better academically.
Yeah.
And also in later life.
Yeah. And sports teams is the same, right?
100%. Yeah. So this is all kind of predicated on that idea.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
So like you wouldn't just do it from secondary age. You'd do it from nursery age. So then it's just kind of embedded.
So they'd still know the same people and all sorts of
Yeah.
sort of stuff. That's interesting.
It's called redshirting in America.
Redshirting.
Taken from college athletics when a lot of players taken out of competition for a season.
Okay, yeah, and held back and then put in again. It's almost like the backtrooping system in the Marines.
100%.
Yeah.
I see it again.
You're not ready yet, so let's pull you back and put you in with people you are ready for.
So again, I think probably a lot of stigma around that in the UK. It's a lot more common in the US apparently.
Okay.
Predominantly middle class. It's kind of like a middle class thing to do, you know, because people that have less money can't worry about shit like that. You know what I mean? Naturally. It's a gentrified issue at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Which is so is the masculinity crisis, really, isn't it?
100%.
It's not rearing its head in the working class environment.
It's just middle class white people like us with nothing better to do.
Nothing better to talk about.
Chewing people's ear off. But I thought that was an interesting one. And as a June birthday, I mean, I did quite well academically, but like at times you do feel like a bit lost being the younger one in the year because it's weird, isn't
Everyone progresses and you feel like a little bit left behind, I guess. Well, I was December, so I'm
you're kind of like middle of the pack, really, aren't you? But it's weird at school because if you're the youngest in the year, all through school it's shit. Yeah. Because like, you're last to have a birthday, like you're the last to do everything. You learn to drive last.
Yeah.
As soon as you leave school, being the youngest is best.
That's true.
Because suddenly everyone's turning 25. Yeah. And I've still got 6 months of being 24.
That's true. Yeah, it's kind of shifts, isn't it? It's quite strange that, you know, the winnings of being older are massive in school. You know, you like you said, you kind of advance quicker, you maybe mature physically quicker, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So you've got two people in the same year, so you who are essentially 11 months younger than someone else who's born in September, but you're in the same year, so you're still prying for the same spots on a sports team. However, you're 12 months less, developed physically than your peer who you're going up against, which isn't really fair if you think about the difference between, when you're in those years and 12 months is a massive amount.
Yeah.
When we're 25 to 26, there's not much difference, right? But from like 15 to 16,
like a year 8
huge
and a year
difference.
11, like when you come across them on like the school field,
they feel like they're fucking John Terry.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an actual bloke.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're just like this little prepubescent like chipmunk with a squeaky voice.
And that can be the difference, and that can be in the same school year, which is quite interesting. So yeah, you're right. I agree with that.
So that's one. The next one is around the idea of HEAL jobs, which is an acronym.
Okay.
It stands for Health, Education, Administration and Literacy.
Female dominated at the moment? No?
Female dominated, but then equally, females are now penetrating STEM jobs more. Okay. So like science, technology,
engineering.
Mechanics. I think it's mathematics. Or, anyway.
I think it is mathematics.
You know what we mean?
Yeah, STEM.
So the idea is now that, again, we like role reverse. And we like, because men are so underrepresented in places like education, teaching and stuff, we can prioritise getting them into more HEAL jobs, because then that feeds back into what we were saying about positive male role models.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
So like in teaching, we've got some stats for you.
Go for it.
As of 2021, only 15% of teachers at state-funded primary schools in the UK were male.
Okay.
15,
but that's not a lot, is it, at all?
And that's not an outlier either. That figure's stayed steady for the past decade or so.
Okay, interesting.
So, but again, weirdly, senior positions within primary education, males are overrepresented. So it's like they're more likely to rise to the top.
That's strange.
Which again is deceiving.
Well, I think though that... So, I play devil's advocate a little bit.
Go on.
I have almost reasoning for this manifestation, right? So, men are genetically and biologically more prone to like to deal with things. And so, so that becoming an engineer or becoming a... whatever it is in the STEM field. The STEM fields are just more...
Well, no, they are. They're more
to
concentrated on things than people.
Yeah, that's just a truism. So when we're choosing jobs and actually going through our lives and going through what we're interested in, what we're not interested in, the boys choose the STEM fields or the STEM style stuff, and girls are more interested in caring for people, are more interested in generally in people. So people are going to be included in like nursing. You know, you're going to care for people.
Yeah.
Care homes, you're going to be caring for people. Like teaching, you're going to be essentially nurturing and caring for people. So I think it naturally manifests, because in Scandinavia they've done some work to try and balance this out.
Go on.
And it actually goes the opposite way than what you'd think.
Oh, really?
So they've done they've almost integrated some things where you have to meet certain quotas. So there has to be like equal representation. And then people go the opposite ways than you would imagine.
It's forcing the issue, though.
It is forcing the issue, and you probably shouldn't do that. But
interestingly, though, PTing is a heel job. So we're feminists.
Interesting. There we are. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that it's obviously not an exact science. Obviously, there are still some female representation in STEM fields and some male in heel jobs. But on the whole, in a general sense, there is a majority and a minority in those sort of areas. But also, this is completely unrelated, but this plays into the gender pay gap, because people are like, well, why are women getting paid less than men? Well, if men are dominating STEM fields are much more scalable. If you're working with people and you need that one-to-one contact with someone, with a nurse, you can't scale being a nurse, right? Can you? But if you're making something, then you can 100% scale that and sell it.
And I think herein lies the issue of why traditionally men have been less inclined to go towards heel jobs. Because like you said, you know, traditionally they like dealing with things more than people.
Yeah. And it's just a biological thing. They've done so many tests that you can't take that away. It's not like it's a societal push in one direction or another.
But also heel jobs pay less.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
like they both feed into each other.
Isn't it? Also, heel jobs are arguably more rewarding and arguably less stressful.
I agree.
You know, if you're owning a tech business, it's a stressful beast. And not that being a nurse isn't a stressful beast, but if you're like a CEO of something, or like we were talking about before with the Fortune 500 companies being owned by men, that's because in order to get to that position, they have to work probably 80 hours a week at the same thing for 10, 12, 15 years, not get sick, so they have to be healthy. They have to be conscientious because they have to be they have to show up every day and be switched on. They have to be healthy, and they have to be the ability to dial into one thing and just sit at it for 15 years. That's pretty much what they have to do. And I think men are just more predisposed to do that than women. Women are just smarter.
Gonna get cancelled, mate.
No, women are just...
Can't say that.
Women are just smarter,
cancelled.
mate.
I like to publicly disassociate myself from Harry Shepherd.
They just don't necessarily feed into that as much because, well, most of them are going to have kids at some point. That takes them out of the game at a certain point, doesn't it? Because they're having 8 months off, whether it be ethical or not. They're not working for those 8 months.
True. Again, we're not saying everyone wants to have kids.
No, but I mean,
I know a lot of women do.
Most women do. Apparently, actually, it's the first time for I think ever in the last year that now 50.1% of 30-plus-year-old females are childless.
Mad.
So if you play that out, obviously that leads into the population crisis, which we'll talk about.
I was going to say, I think we're going to do a separate episode on the population crisis because that is also going to rear...
That's a huge issue.
Going to rear its ugly head at some point.
Yeah, and a huge topic. But
yeah, okay, so I've got a few more statistics to throw at you.
Go for it.
So we've used the example of primary education, but if you look elsewhere within HEAL, it does also make sense for high representation of men.
Right.
And I will explain. Substance abuse. So like rehabilitation and stuff like that, drug misuse. So 76% of substance abuse counsellors are women, but 67% of substance abusers are men.
Okay.
So there's a mismatch there.
Yeah.
And I've never gone through counselling or therapy, but I could imagine
to them.
you would relate to a male more.
Yeah.
In
Well, you'd want a male figure, someone who you can relate to go to.
Yeah, and again, I'll go back to the example of education. I don't know about you, but at school I was related to male teachers more.
Well, you see it in PT. You see it in personal training, 100%. Like I worked in a gym where you had employed trainers, and the client could essentially choose their trainer, and like 9 times out of 10, a female would choose a female trainer and a male would choose a male trainer.
Yeah.
It's just who you relate to and who you trust and who you think's been through the same kind of things as you've been through in your life, and you just feel like that's how you should manifest.
And I think a lot of these decisions are almost going on subconsciously in our mind
yeah,
as well. They're not they're like, oh, he's a male, so I'll go with him. It's just like there's a lot of bias going on in your brain, isn't there?
Yeah, and you want to connect to that person in that environment, like a counsellor, or in the environment of a personal trainer. You don't want to be judged, certainly, and you want to be accepted by that person. You want to almost relate to maybe what they've been through, and again, if they've had a similar time of it, like they've been treated like a male gets treated through school and through whatever, then they might have the same issues as you, and then they might be able to help you. So it's a subconscious thing, you're right. And also in a PT setting, take a female for example, they've got a menstrual cycle, so they'll maybe know how to deal with it as best they can, as I have to. So it's the same kind of thing, and they just look for similarities in the person they're trying to get help from. So you're right, yeah.
So that's substance abuse.
Yeah.
Another example, special education now. So still on education, but special needs education. 84% of special education teachers are women, but 64% of pupils being referred to special education are male. So again, there's just the imbalance.
Yeah, I do anecdotally completely think though that females do a better job at that.
Ooh.
I just think they do. I would much rather have, if I was to go down that route, have a nurturing female than maybe a harder line male role model. Would you not?
You're getting cancelled here. Well, I think it's completely context specific.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it is. I'm just looking at.
I think males would be far more nurturing to males. I think sometimes, in my experience, female teachers can feel uncomfortable around boys, particularly during adolescence.
It depends on the issue, I guess, and depends on the disability or whatever they're dealing with. So, I guess it is different. But it's interesting that it's such a high proportion. There must be a reason for the fact that there's only 16% of teachers are blokes. There must be a reason. That's a huge disparity.
I guess the only thing that I can think of, I mean, both my parents were teachers. My mum was primary and my dad was secondary.
Yeah.
So they kind of fit the stereotype in that sense.
Yeah.
And my dad was a PE teacher as well.
Yeah, that fits the stereotype, absolutely.
But the only thing that I can think of is that if you're a guy and you were going into the education system, you would go secondary or higher education. Yeah. Just because there's a stigma around, like it sounds childish, but there is a stigma around male primary teachers.
I think probably is, yeah, and
because it's like, why would you want to teach little kids?
Yeah, I think there is a little, and again, it's probably not even vocalised or even in the mainstream. It's probably subconscious.
Subconscious.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But that is a massive distance between male and females. That's the biggest one we've come across in statistics.
Yeah.
Between male and females is 84%, was it?
Yeah, 84 to 64.
Yeah.
So what we're saying here is that we shouldn't kick women out of healed jobs. We just want more men to go into them. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know how you would do that. How would you?
It'd be government policy.
Right.
It would be, so a few years ago there was a massive teacher shortage. There still is. So the government were offering bursaries to train teachers. Okay. Yeah. So you just give them financial incentives through scholarship.
Forced. But
it's not. No, you're not saying like you and you. Yeah. You're going to be a fucking therapist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like
get your fucking white coat.
It's not like you've got to meet quotas like they do in some countries, but you encourage certain things.
Yeah. You don't set quotas because then you set a very kind of it's forced. Then you're getting into very murky waters. What you would do is you would set up financial incentives like scholarships and bursaries for like provide free training to encourage someone to go into that route. I would think.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you're just looking at encouraging people. And again, because it's not forced, you would hope that only people who are that way inclined would go down that route.
Yeah, so someone's been umming and ahhing for ages, but they don't want to fork out to go back to university or to college. If suddenly like a free bursary became available, you would like to think that they'd be like, oh, this is like the
Well, it just nudges them in the
yeah,
direction,
this is the incentive I was waiting for.
Yeah.
So there we go. There's 3 solutions
Yeah.
to the masculinity crisis. I think we covered it as comprehensively as we can.
Yeah, we've covered a lot there. A lot of ground covered.
A lot of ground. Again, got quite deep.
Yeah, but that
Few
happens.
tangents.
That happens. That's what these podcasts are about.
Few highs.
Yeah.
Few lows.
It's been a journey.
No tears yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
So I mean, I think we've covered it fairly well. I think it's again not even defined really that well, online. So I think it's a tough topic to cover. But I think it's an important one. I think men are feeling more and more disillusioned. And again, like I alluded to at the start, I think women are as well. Women are probably feeling the strain just as much. I think a big thing that just people can do, men and women, I think getting together in small to medium-sized groups and doing something that challenges them is a massive thing.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say mate.
Get together.
Sorry to lower the tone of the
Get together
conversation.
separately, I mean.
Yeah.
And do something like that's difficult. Like when you're in the military and you go through adverse times, that's when you bond with. That's when blokes anyway bond over these kind of things.
100%.
They don't. I think women bond over talking about their feelings, talking about emotions, talking about whatever, right? But I think men don't do that, so they need a different vehicle for that. So I think they need
a common cause to work towards.
Yeah, and I think this is another one I've just thought of. This is fresh off my head.
Go on, fucking, have we gone off piece?
Who knows? I think if we had some sort of mandatory martial arts teaching instruction in schools, in like a PE setting,
right,
if you had jiu-jitsu or whatever, BJJ taught in schools, hear me out. I think that, not just for men, but I think because you get, obviously men are the aggressor typically. If you look at, who attacks who and who's the higher chance of raping someone or whatever, it's men. I think the men who do that are men who can't control their sort of aggressive side.
Okay.
And I think if at an early age you're taught controlled aggression, which is what martial arts is, it's aggressive, but it's tempered. And it's when the bell goes, you go hell for leather. When it goes again, you stop, and you have to stop. And I think that teaches such a massive portion of emotion control. Because I think a man who can't control his emotions is dangerous because they're going to act on these impulses, and because men have the ability to be quite imposing figures physically, then it can manifest itself to be dangerous. But I think if it's tempered and it's controlled in the early days, and obviously it plays into what we're talking about national service with discipline and timing and these kind of things,
and just opportunities.
Yeah,
it's just a good opportunity for people to get involved in.
It's multi beneficial because it's physical exercise for starters, it's opportunity, it's community, it's discipline, it's aggression control. So it's all of these things. I don't think there's a drawback personally. I haven't formulated this idea.
It's just fine
over time. But
the drawback is always money.
Yeah, it's true.
If you study government for long enough, you realise that it always
links back.
Follow the money. Go back to the treasury, and when they say no, then rethink your plan.
But they do it with most other sports in school. So in PE, you go through a bit about rugby, then you go through a bit about football, and you go through a bit about. So they do it with loads of other sports. I know. We do athletics. Stick with athletics.
We touched on this in the last episode, though, didn't we? Basically, the school curriculum, in my opinion, isn't fit for purpose anymore.
No, I agree. Yeah.
So and this is just one example of why it isn't fit for purpose.
Well, it's not even that they're doing something actively that is wrong. It's that they're not including something that I think would be hugely beneficial. And I think the reason I said jiu-jitsu and not kickboxing or something is because it's not. First of all, it's not an athletic thing. Like if you're kickboxing and you're just stronger than the other person, you're probably going to beat them. In jiu-jitsu, it's all leverage based, and that helps.
It's like mind over matter, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like guile wins, rather than brawn, and so that helps with it being accessible to everyone. And also, there's not the Like, if you get into a scrap with someone who's a jiu-jitsu practitioner, they're probably going to tie you up in knots, but you're not going to injure yourself.
Only if you get on the floor with them, though.
Yeah, but I mean, or like a grappler in total. Like,
yeah, I know. Yeah, they'll fold you in half, won't they? Like a fucking origami swan.
Yeah, but you're not going to get hurt, is my point. If you get into a scrap with someone who's only done boxing, their only response is just to whack you in the face, and that is obviously causing damage to their knuckles and your fucking grid. And so, if you're looking at how can you equip people with a safe method to defend themselves, I think jiu-jitsu's...
That's a good one. That's a good ad hoc shout.
Yeah, there we go. So I thought of that on my run the other day, and then forgot about it. And then now it's rekindled itself. There you go.
To be fair, I've been thinking about getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just because...
That's why it made me think.
But again, if I had the opportunity to do it at school, I would already know if I like it or not.
Yeah, exactly, like you do with other sports. Like,
yeah.
You know you don't want to do high jumping.
And it's weird as well, because at fucking secondary, it was at year 7 or 8, we had to do movement, which was basically them just rebranding dance.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, it went down like a fucking lead balloon.
Yeah, it was shite. Like, the only 12, 13-year-old lads who just all they want to do is play football and do things that lads want to do, and you're having them stand in a hall.
But this is the whole irony of it, though, wasn't it? It's like the only way they could make it sound appealing to us is we choreographed dances to football songs. So I think we did
Met in the middle.
Samba de Janeiro or something.
Yeah.
And all of the dance, like the choreography, was all just basically football celebrations.
Yeah.
So what is the fucking point in
Have
that?
them score a goal and create their own celebration.
Yeah. So
anyway.
So there we go. We've got 4 for you. So we've got national service, getting more men into heel jobs, holding boys back an academic year, and kind of obligatory martial arts on the school curriculum.
Yeah.
There you go. Masculinity crisis solved.
Just like that.
I'm expecting a thank you note in the post, Rishi. Saved you a lot of fucking headache there, mate.
Yeah. And we're still open for job offers if you're offering.
So I've just realised now we've got to do reasons to be cheerful, but we didn't actually discuss it prior to filming.
We didn't. Correct.
Have you got a reason to be cheerful? I've got a selfish one.
I'd go for yours, so I haven't thought of anything.
Right, okay. Well, no, this is selfish.
I might think of something when I'm... Yeah.
This is selfish for both of us.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily hold any value to the listener.
That's fine. Doesn't have to.
My reason to be cheerful this week is that we're over the hump of marathon training.
Yes, I agree. So,
in fact, it is relevant because people might be going through this themselves.
Yeah, because the marathon season, I guess, is upon us, isn't it?
But in any form of training, I guess. It's when you're over the hump of the training.
Yeah. When the hay's in the barn, as they say, when the work's already done, and now you can just enjoy a little bit of recovery before you actually have to perform. That's always a nice feeling.
So I was a bit apprehensive. I mean, like, we won't chew your ear off about this because we're going to do a separate post-marathon episode, aren't we? But like, I was quite apprehensive before that 20-miler because it was the furthest we'd ran. Mm-hmm. We were basically trialling a lot of things out, so all of our fueling, all of our kit for the day. It was basically a dress rehearsal, wasn't it? And it basically went completely according to plan.
Yeah, it went without a hitch, really.
Yeah.
Which is massively confidence boosting. And now we're only 16 days out.
Yeah.
So it's a good job, because if it hadn't gone to plan, we'd have no time to rectify it. So that's a good one, I think. Yeah, because again, if you're training for either the Manchester Marathon, probably would have been done by the time this comes out, or it'll be on Sunday. And then London Marathon, if you're training for any of these kind of races that are coming up, you are over the build phase, which is always the hard bit, and now you're into the taper, which is always the great bit.
So you can't take your eye off the ball yet, because you've still got to get the job done.
Yeah.
But it's just that, you know, sometimes you have got to sit back and think, fucking hell, I've put a lot of graft in here.
Come a long way. Yeah. The warm and fuzzy.
The warm and fuzzy.
Warm and fuzzy feeling. Happy with that.
That's mine anyway.
Yeah.
Bit selfish this week,
fine.
but
I agree. I concur.
We'll give something back next week.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I haven't got anything else to add.
Nothing else. I think we've rounded off the masculinity crisis fairly neatly, or as succinctly as we can, given that we're massively underqualified and did a week of research.
Always a challenge.
Another caveat for you there.
Like a challenge. Add that to the list.
Given that if it's quite a divisive issue, would be quite interested to get other people's takes on it.
If you've got anything you disagreed with than what we talked about, bang it in the comments. Any sort of thoughts on a pertinent point that we made or whatever, then bang it in the comments. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. Also, if you've got any suggestions about topics you'd like us to cover, then bang them in the comments as well.
And equally, if you don't want to put them in the comments because you feel like it's quite personal or you just don't want everyone else seeing it, just send us a message.
On the Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, on the Instagram.
Cool. Happy days. That's us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in next week's episode.
See you in a bit.